MMA fans, are we coming down from a high or what? We are coming off of the UFC Seattle card last weekend that saw the best fight card of 2026 so far, and it's not even close. In terms of the action that took place in the cage, 9 finishes out of 13 fights. All 6 fights on the main card were finishes. There were 5 matchups between ranked fighters on the card. There was a fairy tale retirement for Michael Chiesa. That card truly had everything. Hell, it even included Demetrius Johnson getting inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. And then next week on April 11th, we have what is on paper the most stacked fight card of the year, and that would be UFC 327. 2 championship bouts, Yuri Prochazka versus Carlos Alberg, Joshua Van versus Tatsuro Taira, and a plethora of big-time names, big-time matchups, and rankings and stakes and storylines aplenty. But sandwiched right in between them is this upcoming weekend's card, UFC Vegas 115, in what, from a name value perspective, may very well be the worst UFC fight card that I've ever seen. However, there is a bright spot, and that is the main event, as we will see the number 10 ranked money man Renato Moicano taking on the unranked but surging prospect Chris Duncan. In the co-main event, big time implications in the strawweight division as the former title challenger Virna Jandiroba is back taking on baby shark Tabatha Ricci, who is looking to break into title contention for the first time. And look, outside of that, it's by no means great whatsoever. But hey, at least we have those 2 matchups, and that's what we're here to discuss right here, right now. So, in that main event, the number 10 ranked Renato Moicano actually enters the event on a 2-fight losing streak, but peel the page back just a little bit, you will see that he has won 4 of his last 6 bouts. 3 of those 4 wins by way of stoppage. Those stoppages include Brad Riddell, Jalen Turner, and Benoit Saint Denis. And the decision that's sprinkled in there was over Drew Dober, who's coming off of a massive win against Michael Johnson just a few weeks ago. And if you look at the losses, it's not like he was fighting bums. It was a short notice, 1-day notice championship bout against Islam Makhachev last January, and then it was a fight against Beneil Dariush last summer. And so after a near 10-month hiatus, Renato Moicano at 36 years old is back fighting in the octagon, looking to hold his spot not only in the top 10, but in the rankings in general. If he were to lose here against Duncan, it's not out of the realm of possibility to think he may just get booted out of there because of how stacked this weight class is right now. And to find Renato Moicano's UFC debut, you have to scroll all the way down to December 20th of 2014 and what is now his 12th year of competing in the biggest organization in the world. And don't forget that those early days is when he was competing in the featherweight division, and look at the names that he was fighting then. Jeremy Stevens, Brian Ortega, Calvin Kattar, Cub Swanson, Jose Aldo, Korean Zombie. And Moicano would fully transition to the lightweight division for good in March of 2020. And so all in all, since being at 155 pounds, he has tallied off a record of 7 wins to 4 losses. And the other losses are to RDA, Rafael dos Anjos, a former champion, on I think 72 hours notice when he flew across the damn world.
I took a fight, 5-round fight in 4 days notice. I drinking beer, eating steaks in Brazil, and they call me, and I'm come here. I travel 24 hours. Disrespect me.
And the 4th loss at lightweight for Moicano came against Rafael Fiziev. So the men that he is losing to are nothing but the elite of the elite at the time that he fights them. Yes, of course, you can say that Rafael dos Anjos maybe wasn't in his prime in March of 2022, but he wasn't far removed, and the same can be said for Beneil Dariush last summer. And what we see here of Chris Duncan is not that status. He is not of the elite of the elite. He doesn't even have a number next to his name, but just because he doesn't have those accolades or big name recognition doesn't mean that he isn't deserving of this opportunity. And that is because the 32-year-old Chris Duncan out of Scotland is 6-1 in the UFC since debuting in March of 2023 and will enter UFC Vegas 115, his first ever main event opportunity, riding a 4-fight win streak with 3 of those 4 wins coming by way of submission. And the most recent victory would come against T-Rex Terrence McKinney in round 1, shocker, back in December at UFC 323. And of course that's aging quite well, as Terrence McKinney just got a first round victory in 24 seconds last weekend against Kyle Nelson. And his only loss in the UFC was to Manuel Torres, still someone that has a lot of potential on the outside looking in of 155 pounds, and they would scrap back and forth for 1 minute and 46 seconds until Duncan would be submitted. And it's also worth noting for Chris Duncan that it didn't come easy for him to get into the UFC, as the former 3-fight Bellator alum will get an opportunity during the 2021 Dana White Contender Series season, but would fall short and get knocked out by Slava Claus in round 2. He would go back to the drawing board, secure 1 victory victory, then get invited back to the 2022 season of Dana White Contender Series, where he would then make good on that second opportunity, picking up a first-round knockout, and that is when he would earn his shot into the UFC. With a record of 15-2, having ever only gone the distance 4 times and finished 11 of his 15 with 7 knockouts and 4 submissions, he is an all-action fighter, a kill-or-be-killed fighter who's been finished in both of his losses. He's going to come in there and he's going to lay it all on the line. And Renato Moicano is no stranger to getting into scraps, as he has finished 12 of his 20 wins and been finished in 5 of his 7 losses. This fight is going to deliver in terms of what the fans can anticipate seeing action-wise in the cage. And it's going to come down to this. Does the veteran expertise against all the big-name fighters that Renato Moicano possesses outweigh the momentum of Chris Duncan riding that 4-fight win streak with 3 of them by way of finish? And given that he is 4 years younger, right in his prime, whereas Moicano is on the outside looking in of his. Because when the fight's going to be on the feet, both guys are going to get hit. They are very vulnerable in the striking realm. And where things will get very fascinating, in my opinion, is actually going to be the grappling realm, because we've seen Renato Moicano have plenty of success. Half of his wins at the end of the day have come by way of submission, and he does average 1.67 takedowns per 15 minutes. But Chris Duncan, you could say, has shown more grappling success over the past few fights than Moicano, as he averages 3.27 takedowns per 15 minutes. And both of them, from a takedown defense perspective, are not that great. Renato's just 62% and Duncan just 50%. This fight truly could be all over the place, and I'm here for just how sloppy it could get. So for Duncan, let's see what he's truly made of as he gets that first big step and big jump up in competition in the UFC, an opportunity to crash in to the top 10 of the most stacked division in the UFC, at least debatably alongside bantamweight and welterweight. And if he does, that's going to be a big notch on his resume. He will be amongst the contenders now in this lightweight division and be a big talking point for European mixed martial arts moving forward, as he will then become one of the bigger names out of that region representing the sport of MMA. And for Moicano, will this losing streak continue, or can he hold his spot in the rankings before it gets too late in his career to have one more resurgence? Give me all of your thoughts and your predictions on this UFC Vegas 115 main event down in the comments below. And as far as the divisional impact of the fight, I would say that the co-main event actually has much higher stakes than the main event, as it will feature the number 3 ranked former title challenger Virna Jandiroba and the number 7 ranked Tabatha Ricci, with Jandiroba battling to hold her spot amongst the strawweight elite and amongst title contenders, and Tabatha Ricci looking to break into title contention for the very first time. For Jandiroba, this will be her first fight since UFC 321 on October 25th of last year, when she would have that very, very fun fight for 25 minutes against Mackenzie Dern, where they competed for the vacant strawweight title. Dern would come out as the victor in a very closely contested scrap. But prior to that, Jandiroba was the hottest fighter going in the strawweight division, as she was on a 5-fight win streak, all of them against ranked opponents, featuring Yan Xiaonan, a former title challenger, Amanda Lemos, a former title challenger, Lupi Godinez, the current number 6 ranked strawweight in the world, Marina Rodriguez, a perennially top 10 ranked strawweight, and Angela Hill, who is still in the top 15 of the strawweight division all these years later. And when you look at the entire scope of Virna Jandiroba's UFC career that spans back to April of 2019, she has gone 8-4, and 2 of the 4 losses are to the same woman in Mackenzie Dern, and the other 2, Amanda Ribas, a top 10 strawweight, and Carla Esparza, of a former 2-time champion. And not once has she ever been finished in her 4 losses. She is extremely durable. However, when she's getting her hand raised, it is more often than not by way of stoppage, as she has finished 15 of her 22 wins, and 14 out of the 15 come by way of submission. She's a very, very dangerous, slick grappler when it gets down there from an offensive perspective, and that's something that Ricci has to escape if she wants to find success in this matchup. For the Baby Shark, she is 31 years old, right in her prime, and is finally getting that opportunity to break into title contention, because in her biggest bouts prior to this, that is where she faltered the most. See the opportunities against Lupi Godinez in November of 2023 and Yan Xiaonan in November of 2024. However, outside of that, in the strawweight division, she has been damn good, going 7-2 since coming to 115 pounds, because we can't forget that she debuted against Manon Fior up a weight class at flyweight back in June of 2021, where she would be finished in the second round. And she holds very good wins in this strawweight division as well, including Jillian Robertson, Tisha Pennington, Angela Hill, and a finish in her her most recent bout that came against the number 10 ranked Amanda Hebos last summer. So while it's unfortunate that we only saw Baby Shark fight one time in 2025, she's at least fighting relatively early on in 2026 against a number 3 ranked opponent, and if she gets a victory here, it's not crazy to think that the UFC may even give her a title shot, but at most, she will only need one more victory before she's standing across from whomever the strawweight queen will be. And I actually feel that this co-main event slot here at UFC Vegas 115 actually will kickstart quite a bit of momentum for this strawweight title picture, because obviously here it's number 3 versus number 7. Then next weekend at UFC 327, we will see Tatiana Suarez versus Lupi Godinez. That's number 2 ranked Tatiana, a former title challenger, versus the number 6 ranked Lupi Godinez, one of my favorite female fighters on the roster. And I'd have to imagine that by the summertime, July or August, we will be seeing Mackenzie Dern defend her strawweight title for the first time, and it will likely be against a returning Zhang Weili to strawweight. So regardless of who wins here at UFC Vegas 115, I do believe that they'll have to fight at least one more time to get a crack at gold, for Virna her second opportunity and for Ricci her first. And so there are major stakes involved here in this strawweight scrap, as Virna does not want to slide down the rankings, because if she does at this state in her career, being that she is now 37 years of age and soon to be 38 in May, her odds of getting back into title contention become much slimmer. However, for Ricci, she is once again getting that opportunity, that jump up in competition to join the elite discussions, and if she falters for a third time, you'd have to think that she's quite a ways away from title contention. So there is pressure on both women, and at a pivotal time in this women's strawweight division, especially with other surging contenders making their way up the ranks, such as Fatima Klein and Alexia Tainara, who just had a victory last week and is now 3-0 in the promotion. And so the ball is rolling, the butter is churning in this women's strawweight division, and I want to get your thoughts, your opinions, and your predictions on this co-main event down below. Who's going to come out the victor and inch themselves one step closer to strawweight gold? And don't get me wrong, there's going to be other fun fights on this card. I don't doubt it for a second. But if we're talking name value and if we're talking storylines, there's hardly anything else to discuss. However, there are a few undefeated fighters on this card that I think you do need to keep your eyes on. The first being in the light heavyweight division in the featured bout of the evening. That will be Abdul Rahman Yakyayev taking on Brinson Ribeiro. We have the 14-0 Rafael Estevam taking on Ethan Ewing, who had a short notice victory in Madison Square Garden last November against Malcolm Wellmaker. We have the 9-0 Tommy McMillan competing in the featherweight division. He's a teammate and training partner of Sean O'Malley, who's going to be in attendance. We have the 6-0 heavyweight Guilherme Pat taking on Thomas Peterson. And so obviously come Monday in the recap of this fight card, there's going to be more to discuss. There's going to be people that are getting convincing, emphatic performances and finishes. I don't doubt it for a second. And that is where their stock and name value can rise when they get big time performances on fight nights such as these, where they can stand out amongst the crop. But for now, that is it for the breakdown. And it's time to turn the discussion over to you. Give me your low-key bangers and fights that you're looking forward to outside of those top 2 bouts, and what some of your favorite bets are for this card down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new, as every single week I break down the biggest fights and storylines heading into each card. I recap the most meaningful results in the aftermath, and I give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can also join the community on social media at Verbal Spar MMA on X, Instagram, and TikTok, as well as like the Facebook page Verbal Sparring MMA, and you can follow on your favorite audio listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple, where every Monday and Friday podcast episodes release there. Have a great weekend, enjoy the fights, and I will see you in the next video.